2/3 of Americans say they're tired of toxic division. Most of them don't even know where to start doing something about it. In Minnesota, a coalition of funders and bridge builders decided to find out one listening session at a time. Today, two of the people building that effort walk us through it. Stick with me. Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The D-Rate the Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful D-Rate the Hate episode. So let's get to it. Today's conversation is about a new statewide effort here in Minnesota called the Land of Neighbors campaign, a multi-year collaborative project built by a coalition of Minnesota foundations and bridging organizations working to counter toxic division and help Minnesotans reconnect as neighbors regardless of their politics. Full disclosure, I'm one of several people on the campaign's leadership team, so this one's close to home for me. Joining me today are two of the people helping lead and speak for that effort. Libby Stegger is founder and executive director of Civic Bridgers, a nonprofit that prepares leaders to bridge divides in civic life. Bill Doherty spent 38 years teaching marriage and family therapy at the University of Minnesota before co-founding Braver Angels, the national citizen initiative now working in all 50 states to bring conservatives and liberals back into the conversation and build together across differences. Libby and Bill are here representing the broader coalition behind this work, which also includes Common Ground USA, CRD Connect, Media Minefield, and a group of Minnesota funders who came together around the shared question, what are the shared values being missed due to the division that we're seeing in our state? Let's get into it with two of my very good friends, Libby Stegger and Bill Doherty. Here we go. Libby Stegger and Dr. Bill Doherty, welcome to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. It is fantastic to see both of you this morning.
Likewise, good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Good to see. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited about this for any number of reasons. But most of all, what we're here to talk about today is a campaign that we're all working on together. Bill, you and I obviously have been doing a lot of work together for a number of years at Braver Angels, and then Libby, you are the executive director at Civic Bridgers, and together we are now involved in this collaborative project here in the state of Minnesota, the state in which we all live, called the Minnesota Land of Neighbors. And it's been a great project so far. It's been something that we've been working on now for the last several months. It's going to be a multi-year project that our organizations are involved in collaboration as well with Common Ground USA, Media Minefield, Nathan Stock at CRD Connect. So there are a number of us working on this. It's an incredible project, and that is our subject today. So I think I'll start with, let me start with Libby and as the person who first approached us about this opportunity. Libby, let's get into it. Let's start talking a little bit about where this thing started, how we ended up doing this thing together.
Isn't it amazing how these things evolve? I knew from the outset that we wanted you, Wilk, to be part of this, and Braver Angels, with Bill's vision in co-founding that organization. There was a call from a group of funders and organizations who said in the winter, we are hearing from so many Minnesotans who are feeling the toxicity of division and who know and still believe that there's another way. It doesn't mean we'll all get along, but there's another way for us to be neighbors together. And so what are we going to do about it? And then so they put out a call, and at Civic Bridgers, we are an organization that believes strongly in bridging divides in service of our country and our state. And so we said, well, we want to be a part of this, and who needs to be at the table? And so we immediately thought of you all and others like Common Ground USA and the work that Nathan's doing around the state to reduce political violence or eliminate political violence. And so we said, what can we build together? And that was the question, right? We just said, what are we going to build? And started talking and started dreaming up what was possible. And at the root of that was we need to start with listening to Minnesotans, because we have lots of ideas, but so do Minnesotans. And actually, Minnesotans really have a history of showing up for each other. And so how do we actually help do more of that, do more of the good that already exists here in service of a greater vision? And so that was the impetus. Bill, was there anything you would add or adapt about that evolution?
Yeah, no, I think that's what's so fascinating is that a coalition of funders, major foundations, said we need a sustained effort to see if we could bring Minnesotans together. Because we're really we're maybe not as divided as some other states, but we are divided, and so it was quite a remarkable thing that this group of funders said, let's work on this issue.
Yeah, and I think that that is something that we want to key on here a little bit, because these foundations here in the state of Minnesota, the fact that they recognize this, and I think you're right, Bill. I think there are a number of states that maybe more divided than Minnesota, but one of the things that really stands out is the way that Minnesota has landed in the national news media, the way that we're being portrayed here in the state of Minnesota, and the recognition by the funders that this is something that we need to get ahead of. We need to show the people in our state, most of all, but the rest of the nation as well, that we are not as divided as the way that we're being portrayed in the media. We're not as divided as many people would have you believe. Talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that this campaign is to see what we share, see what it means to be a good neighbor, and what we look like at our best. What was that recognition like, and kind of walk us through what we were told at the beginning of this thing?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We know that 2/3 of Americans are tired of this toxic division, and often they want to do something about it, but don't always know where to start. And so some of that is that there is a lot of content being pushed to us and a lot of narratives that say you're so divided and it's irreconcilable. But what we see in the stories of everyday people is that they actually are taking steps to connect, to work together across differences. And so how do we reconcile those two things? And one of the ideas is, well, as you said, see what we share. It doesn't mean we're all the same, nor do we want to be. It doesn't mean we will all agree, nor do we want to. Right? The goal is not for us to agree on everything. The goal is for us to be able to live together and have a shared future. And when we can see these micro examples of it happening, and then we hear this narrative that says, oh, it's impossible. Well, there's something wrong there. There's something off. And so our goal is really to amplify, well, what do we share, and help us see it and help others see it as well. Shed light on that so that we can root in that when things get tough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bill, let's talk a little bit about the listening sessions then, and what we're trying to do with the listening sessions, where we're trying to go with the listening sessions, how we're including trusted partners and advisors in these different areas. What's the significance of that, and what's the significance, first of all, of just the listening sessions themselves?
Sure. Well, this is, Libby said, this is a key thing because we can come up with the mousetrap that we think everybody needs, right? But here we really want to spend time listening to Minnesotans and what's important to them, and then develop some action steps after that. And what we've done I want to highlight, by the way, unless we skip over it, that this theme we chose about neighbors.
Yeah,
that a lot of work went into that theme. Okay, because that's where we are probably more connected, Libby, as you were saying. Okay, the number of people who will have their neighbor have the house key, so when they're gone, they can make sure the trash gets picked up or something like that. That's neighboring. Okay, and so what we're doing in these listening sessions is inviting people from different communities. We're going to be doing this all over the state, and we ask them to think about neighboring at three levels. The close in, which could be your geographical neighborhood, it could be clubs you're part of, or a faith community, people that you know, who are not family and the closest friends, the next layer out, okay, and who you identify as your neighbors. And then the question we're asking, when your neighborhood, as you define it, is at its best, what's it like? Okay, what would you aspire to it to be like? How are people supporting each other? How are they solving problems together? And how are they relating to outsiders? The key three questions. What are people doing for support? How do they solve problems together? And how do they relate to outsiders? And so we invite people to write down and then share with each other at tables their vision for what a great neighborhood is. And then we go to the next level, which is your town, your city. What do you identify? The way I think of this one is when people say, "Where are you from?"
Sure.
How do you answer that question? Okay. So it's not exactly your neighborhood, but it's your town, it's your city, it's where you're from. Okay.
Sure.
Then think about that level. And when that neighborhood, that larger neighborhood is working well at its best, how do people support each other? How do they solve problems together? And how do they deal with outsiders? Same process. Then the third one, and this is pretty radical, is thinking about the state. The state of Minnesota as a neighborhood, if you will. Okay, that's what part of the country are you from? Okay, I'm from Minnesota, and then when knowing that at that level, there's been so many challenges and so many divisions, but what do we aspire to there? And there we're asking, what are a couple key values that you think most Minnesotans hold? And this is what Libby was talking about a minute ago. There's a lot we do hold together. And what do you think those are? And then, what are a couple of key priorities that you have for how we would live that out? So that's the process we go through with people. And it's very inspiring. And people really do discover a lot of common ground. The other thing I'll add that I've learned over the years in this bridging work is that if you start with policies and politicians, you end up thinking we got nothing in common.
Sure. Right? No, that's absolutely right.
If you start with values, aspirations, you find out with stories, you find out we have a lot in common.
That's absolutely right. And one of the most beautiful things that, when I think about this, and I think about the three tiers of what we're talking about when we're talking about neighboring, when you start with those people that you're in direct contact with and then work out from there, it gets harder if you start with the bigger picture when you're thinking in terms of border to border, top to bottom, everything else, because there's a whole bunch of people that we don't really compartmentalize what we do share with all those folks. But when we start from that nucleus, those people that we have direct contact with, the people that we know and we physically see day in and day out, or week in and week out, it's easy to see, or it's much easier to see what we share there. And then trying to visualize that from the inside and moving outward as opposed to outward and moving in. I think we benefit a lot from that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Richard Davies, host of the podcast, How Do We Fix It?, where we report on the people, projects, and ideas of braver angels. Listen and subscribe to our shows wherever you get your podcasts. So far, we've recorded more than 36 episodes, all about braver angels. Most are less than 30 minutes long. Again, our podcast is How Do We Fix It, and our website is howdowefixit.me.
Yeah, we think about this flattening that can happen when we're talking about people who are far, far away or who we don't know very well. Think about like if you're looking at somebody far in the distance or on the horizon, they're kind of, it's green. Is that a blue shirt? Is it a black shirt? Are they, what do they really look like? It's hazy and opaque. And so we can make some assumptions. But when they're near in and close up, you see their texture. You see the texture of their hair, the gray lines, the wrinkles that start, right? You can get a sense of them. And so when you think of that as their whole self too, the nearer in you are, the easier you can see their wholeness and their complexity. And so that's where we begin. And our real challenge is to say, and how do we bring that statewide so that we are a land of neighbors, so that we recognize that the humanity that I share with you both in knowing your texture, we can translate that and trust that among our neighbors across the state. And it's no easy feat. So we are going to need lots of Minnesotans to be part of this because we don't hold all the answers. We are here as facilitators of a statewide conversation that needs to happen to say, how do we turn this great neighboring that happens at that sort of micro level, mutual aid, shoveling snow, into these sort of bigger policy questions or just public debates and problems that we need to solve together. But if we can't start with the micro, that's where we have to build. But to Bill's point, we can't start with that big piece because we have to build the texture.
No, that's absolutely right. And one of the big things here that I want to actually go back to and key on a little bit more, because this is where I think the great importance lies in what we are doing, is this group of people, not just us three, but but the group we've brought together to work on this collaborative project. We've all been in our own ways doing a lot of bridging work for a number of years, collectively a lot of years. And I say that because of Bill. But
well, this is the second. Libby mentioned gray hair and lines, which I thought she's looking at me on it, but I kept my mouth shut. And then you
both bring such wisdom.
Yeah, but then you referred. So, okay, keep going. I just had to say that.
Oh, but the beautiful thing here is like I said, with all the wisdom and the experience that we all bring to the table in our whole group collectively, we're not trying to just tell everybody what the solution is or build the perfect mousetrap, as Bill said right at the beginning. This is about listening to Minnesotans talk about what neighboring is to them, what they think their community looks like at its best. Talk about the significance of why this is Minnesotans building the solution to the problem themselves. This isn't us bringing them the solution to what we see their problem as being.
Yeah, well, yes, the solutions will emerge, and priorities will emerge. So, I mean, let's be clear, we're gonna have a creative process, we the team, at some point on this. It's not like we're just going to poll people and say, what should we do? But it's going to be informed. So let me give you an example of something that emerged in the first listening session. This was in Fergus Falls, about values that Minnesotans hold. The love of the land, the love of water, the love of our environment. It was so interesting that came out of and the question was about Minnesota. Okay, maybe in a different state, there would be different sorts of priorities, but this is the land we live in, and it's a common value we have. That would be an example. So, what could come from that? I don't know, but could we encourage or facilitate action steps that would be related to people who differ politically, but who love the land? Okay, because a lot of times what happens now is the mining or the environment, and the land becomes a source of division. But what it gets to be is business or the land. Okay. Well, everybody loves the land, and most people want business to succeed, right? And so, could we at some point imagine? I'm just riffing off one example here. Okay. Could we imagine some initiatives which would be about people who are otherwise politically divided about the balance between the ecology and business, who coming together around their common love of this environment and this land, and not dividing on it, but coming together on it. That's just like off the top of my head as an example of something we hear that could spin into something.
Yeah, I think it's a great example. And Libby, one of the things that we always think about in terms of bridging and storytelling and trying to come to solutions together to common cause problems, people have to be able to see themselves in the story that's being told, right? If they're going to listen with intention, and if they're going to try to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem, they have to be able to see themselves in the story. And I think Bill's example is absolutely right. I mean, it's beautiful. So many people in Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota's got this vast landscape of incredible beauty. I mean, we've got woods, we've got water, we've got country, we've got city, we've got all these different things. And there's a lot of ways for people to see themselves in that particular story. Talk about the importance of storytelling and people seeing themselves in the story to be part of that common, or that solution to a common cause problem.
I love this question because it evokes, we hear so much about others. This is what other people think. This is what other people believe. And when we root in, well, what do I want? What do I believe? And how am I part of the solution? It actually gives us we can recognize our own power. There's this great phrase Jill on our team uses, which is, what are we going to do about it? Right. So she'll be in an environment and someone will go, oh, this is, it's a work project or a community project. Oh, this isn't going well. And instead of saying, what are you going to do about it? She says, what are we going to do? And it invites this collaborative feeling of like, oh, gosh, we've got to do something about this. So to Bill's question about the land, when we say, what are we going to do? It invites each of us to be a part of it, including ourselves, right? It's not just what are you going to do, or what do you believe about it, or what has someone told me you believe about it? It gives us agency. It gives us a way in. And we can't solve all the problems ourselves. Like we have a lot of hero stories, and hero stories are so motivating. And we've got the Marvel characters, and we've got all these heroes in our collective American narrative. And what we don't spend a lot of time on is all the people who surrounded them, who helped make that happen. And so when we recognize that each of our heroes was backed by a whole group of other people who were finding ways to work together, then we can recognize our own part of this. Because when we think we can solve it all ourselves, or that we have to solve it all ourselves, it's too big. And so instead,
way overwhelming.
What's our small part that we can contribute? How do we be a neighbor to the person next door to us? How do we be a neighbor to that person down the street? How do we push that person out of the snow? But then also, how do we say, here's a challenge that we're really facing. I want to talk about it. I'm going to start where I live.
And that's huge. And then, to continue on and think about, on that particular line, we have to also think about the fact that the state of Minnesota is very broad geographically, and we've got a lot of different things going on in the state of Minnesota, right? I mean, you've got tribal nations, you've got immigrant populations, you've got the people up in the Arrowhead that live in a very different landscape than the people that live in the southern part of the state and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in terms of geographically hitting these different areas of the state to try and bring in the voices of all these different groups that we see in the state of Minnesota, because we are not, there is no description of Minnesota that could be considered monolithic in any way, shape, or form, right? I mean, there's so much going on here. So let's talk a little bit. Libby, talk a little bit about the significance of where we're going to be doing listening sessions and how we're going to try and capture the through lines in these stories. And then I'll turn it over to Bill as well here.
Yeah, spot on. So Bill talked earlier about some of the core questions we're asking, and we're asking the same questions across the state, and seeing where do we find similar answers and where do we find differences, so that we really know how to reach and connect with and support communities in the ways where they're connected and the ways that they're dissimilar. I mean, I've been in small towns who can make very clear distinction from one town over. So to your point, well, we are not a monolith. There is diversity everywhere we see it. And so we have been so lucky to have partners from around the state raise their hand and say they want to host listening sessions. So we've had 3 in Fergus Falls, in the Twin Cities, and in Lake City. And now we're inviting others to host. So I've talked to people from every corner of the state, as far southwest as Beaver Creek, all the way up to Hibbing and Moorhead, who are actually already doing gathering and convening and getting people together to talk about some of these issues. They are now talking about how they can bring neighbors' campaign questions into their communities and think together about how to do something about it. So that's what it looks like to really do this everywhere. I cannot be in all places at all times, but there are so many people around the state who care about this,
right,
who are taking this up. And Bill's designed an incredible way to do that in a way that will connect us, but also help us realize where we have some differences.
Yeah, and then what I'd add to it is that one of the things that our core team is committed to is holding listening sessions in every congressional district. Okay, so the congressional districts are divided up by population. They all have they differ tremendously by geography, but they are similar in terms of numbers of people. So we personally ourselves are going out around the state to hold listening sessions, and then tribal nations as well, which have their own identity. And so we're gonna make sure we get that kind of spread, and then as Libby said, encourage and invite people from their own particular geographical town. It could be their ethnic community. And this is where the advisors come into play. So one of our advisors just approached me the other day. Libby, I hadn't mentioned this to you yet, but would love to pull something together in North Minneapolis. And has the connections and has the background to do this. And then we will be assistants, we will be helpers, and we'll co-create and co-design listening sessions that will work for that community, as long as Libby said, we're asking the same kinds of questions. The answers may be different, but the key is you have to ask the same kinds of questions, and not to do it in a traditional way that questions are often asked. And that is, what are your problems? And then who do you think should solve those problems?
Oh my God.
That's what we do. So what are your problems, which is a way to say, what are your deficits? Okay, we start out, what are your problems? And then who should fix them? And and then it's like, those people should fix them.
Exactly.
The government should fix them, or the people who hate us should stop hating us, or something. I don't mean to trivialize it, but if you ask the questions that way, you end up with a downer, because then people feel powerless.
That's right. It accentuates that powerlessness within them, and they go away not feeling good. But I love, and Libby brought up the word agency earlier. This is one of those things that that was one of the big things with, within the work that we were doing together as we were developing this, was talking about how do we create and renew that sense of agency in people that are feeling lost and distraught with things that are going on. And I think we're doing it the exact right way. Now, there's going to be people asking the question, okay, what, after all these listening sessions, what are we going to do with this data? As we evaluate this as bridge builders, and as we move forward, as we said, this is a multi-year campaign. We're in this for the long haul to affect real change in our civic culture. And Bill, what are we doing with the data after this to really affect change in our state and show people that we're not nearly as divided as people would have you believe?
Well, that's your job. Well, we're gonna hand it over to you at that point. Well, we're deliberately not drilling down on that question.
That's right.
Now, we will. We are hoping to finish a lot of listening sessions before the snow falls. And and we'll do more after that. And then we're going to digest, and then we're going to think about our activation phase. And my own view is that this has got to be in collaboration with others as well. It's not that we go somewhere and dream it up, but we have to see what works for people. But I'll give you, it can be helpful to think about potential examples. And I mentioned that if there was a way for people to come together politically around, who differ politically around their local environment would be, I mean, I just made that one up. And another one, just as an example, who knows if we'll do this kind of thing, but we know that a major threat to the sense of being Minnesotans, the neighbor of Minnesota, is the rural-urban divide. This is well established, and you can just look at the map, the red-blue map in the state. Look at the different reactions that people had in the metro area to the ice surge versus people in greater Minnesota. Just proximity, you feel differently about it. And so maybe there's some ways to form relationships between people in the metro area and people in the greater Minnesota that are sustainable, that really develop ties. I'm just giving an example, but we will potentially have the resources for that. Okay. Yeah. And then the other thing is that whatever we do, you get media attention, and we have Media Minefields, which is a great public relations agency. Advertising marketing, they're along for this ride too. That's right. With public messaging, there's going to be videotaping. So whatever we do, we're going to try to maximize the messaging of this, the inspiration, the stories of hope through the media outreach, which is one of the reasons why this is such a unique project, because that we have a partner who knows how to do that.
Yeah, and one thing that I love about that is that, yes, we will be able to counter some of these narratives of division with narratives of connection. And so that's really powerful in itself. It also invites Minnesotans to be part of a public dialogue, a public debate, because that is how, as a country, how we've addressed a lot of really big, thorny problems, is having a public debate. And that can be through the media. It can be over dinner tables. It can be in neighborhoods. It can be in city halls. And we should be talking about that. We should be talking about how do we be neighbors to each other, and how do we solve big problems in ways that still recognize each other's humanity. That actually is a public conversation we need to be having consistently. And so having things out there in the media and talking about the Neighbors Campaign is not only a way to share stories of hope, it is also a way to invite Minnesotans to be part of the dialogue and to say, again, to their community, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. No, and I think that's an important thing that I want a lot of people to take away from this particular episode is people here in the state of Minnesota can get involved because we want them involved. And to Bill's point, people will ask that question, what's coming next, but we are intentionally holding that back because we don't have all those answers yet. And we don't want to pretend that we do have those answers right now because this is being built by Minnesotans for Minnesotans. And as we collect this data, we will learn what's happening or learn, what's happening in all those communities, find the through lines, and find the ways that we can all best work together, be the best neighbors possible. People can get involved. Libby, talk real quick about our website and where people can get involved, how people can get involved, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Yes, people can get involved. Visit minnesotalandofneighbors.org or MN Land of Neighbors on all the social media channels. You can follow us. You can sign up to receive updates about when listening sessions are in your area. In that, you can indicate to us if you want to get more involved. Maybe you want to host something. Maybe you just want to show up sometime. So you can indicate that when you sign up. Those are great ways to get involved and stay in touch because as we're learning, we're also going to share out what we're learning, right? And so you can follow along and be part of that conversation.
Fantastic. Any last words, Bill?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be talking with you about this. And we're hoping that what we learn here, we can share with other states and other countries.
Be the example that you want to see in the world, right? This is a beautiful project. I'm so honored to be in this work with both of you and the rest of our team and doing this work in the state of Minnesota. So again, the website mnlandofneighbors.org or minnesotalandofneighbors.org. And I look forward to the continued work we're doing together. Thank you so much to both of you today.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the Derate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together, so please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there. Be kind to one another. Be grateful for everything you've got. And remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here and we will catch you next week. Take care.